Hello, pickle friends. So I recorded a very long podcast slash video discussing Carl Jung's shadow work. And it was so long I had to break it into two parts. What you're about to listen to today is part one, or the first half, where I talk to you about what is shadow work and sort of the principles behind it. I hope you enjoy this. I think it's very fascinating work. I think it's especially for neurodivergent people. I think you'll find yourself in a lot of this discussion. So I hope you enjoy it. I will come back at the end to close it out, and then I'll also introduce part two and close it out on episode 77. So thank you and enjoy. Everybody, we have a brand new episode today of Inside the Pickle Jar, and I think I have a pretty interesting subject to talk with you about. It's part of the coaching that I do for people. A lot of times there are people that are struggling, they're stuck in their head, and they maybe have some limiting beliefs, or they have some thoughts about themselves that they're kind of stuck behind. And I wanted to introduce a term, if you haven't heard about it. It's called shadow work. And Carl Jung was the primary psychologist who wrote a lot about it. He was a student of Sigmund Freud, and they had some disagreements about what was the primary work. But I really want to get to the root of shadow work and how I can help you, and how I as a coach can also help you if you need to get outside of your own head, because some of the suggestions that I have later in this conversation might be difficult to do for yourself. Sometimes you need somebody to help you get outside your pickle jar. So if you think about, if you're someone who feels stuck in your life and you really feel like you keep getting in your own way, you go back to old styles and patterns of doing things, and sometimes you think you're the only one that's between what you want to get done and the life you want, or you think that you're a victim and that everybody's in your way and you're blaming everybody else and you can't ever seem to get forward in life. This is something that you might find interesting. And shadow work might be something that you need to start with. And the Jungian shadow is a term that was coined a long time ago as part of analytical psychology, and it's really focused on the unconscious, the unknown depths of your mind. And what that means is that even though the shadow is something you can't see, and you're probably not even aware of it, it's a really critical part of your life. And so what is the shadow? I'm going to try to explain it. Carl Jung he drew a photo of it, and I'll put it in the screen beside me as we discuss this. It's really simple, and it's probably sounds more complicated, but you can see in this drawing, it's fundamental to who we are. The most confusing part about shadow work is that it is something that you have to go deep, and it sounds really scary, and it sounds like it might be really sketchy, but it's actually pretty simple once you get started. So Jung splits the psyche up in several parts, and you can see in this drawing that there are three main parts. And so we have the persona, we have the ego, and the shadow, and then all of it together makes up who we are. And so I think it's best maybe if we start with defining what the persona is. It comes from a Latin word which means mask. And I think this is going to be super relevant for all of you that are neurodivergent, because we do a lot of masking. And so you can think of your persona as the social mask you wear, and that's what you show to the world and the people around you, and it reflects how you want to be perceived. So it's the idea of who you want to be, and sometimes when you're neurodivergent, this doesn't always go so well. You don't always realize how you're being perceived, and that's part of the problem of being inside the pickle jar. But when you develop a persona, you develop a mask, and you think this is how you have to show up, It is what allows you to fit in, and it allows you to adapt to society. And it's formed by what you learn is acceptable, and what it means to be a good person. It also hides some of the parts that you might think are bad, and parts of your personality you're trying to hide or are wrong. And for some of the neurodivergent population, this means just who they are. So when you hide behind your persona, it isn't going to be your true self, and it's still an important part of your personality. So even though your persona is who you want to be, it's your shadow that reflects the opposite of everything you don't want to be. And that's where it becomes kind of a problem if you haven't worked your shadow into yourself. So then your ego is going to identify with your persona. And if you identify too closely with your persona, then you're going to start trying too hard to actually be the person that you want to show up instead of being your authentic self. And so you think you have to be this ideal version of yourself, and then you may end up really rejecting who you really are, your real self. And this is why Jung says that in order to discover and realize your unique potential in life, you have to get rid of your persona. And this seems like it would be really hard and really weird, because if your persona is everything that is good and everything that you ever wanted to be, then why would you reject? Why would you fight it so hard? Well, the problem is that it will never feel natural to maintain that. I know for a lot of neurodivergent people, I know for sure myself, my husband has always counseled me to be authentic, and it's been really hard because I thought for sure I would get rejected. And we'll talk a little bit about that fear of rejection in a little bit. But when you live your life as your persona, then you'll always be fighting yourself in order to keep that mask up. And Jung says, quote, "I am to have a dark side if I am to be whole." And you may think that the only way to be happy is to just be a good person all the time and just be happy, or you have this ideal version of yourself. Well, that happiness really comes actually from embracing all of you, even the parts of you that you maybe don't like, and it's in contrast to the persona. We have a shadow, and Jung describes the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be. It has all of the unconscious and repressed part of our personalities. Everything we thought we were punished for or we were told was bad, anything that we think is bad, anything we think society tells us is bad, it's all in conflict with the persona. And that falls into the shadow. So these are the qualities and emotions and thoughts that you try to hide from the world or feel ashamed of. Most of the time, these shadow traits aren't actually bad. They're underdeveloped, as Jung says. And you can think of most traits like this. So if you're a very careful person, and then this personality trait will show up differently on how much you've taken care to develop it. When I talk about Gallup's strengths, I talk about balconies and basements, and the top 10 talents that you have. If you are in the basement with them, these are underdeveloped. If they're in the balcony with them, then it is you've nurtured and taken care of them. And so the more you develop a trait, the more part of your authentic self it can be, and it doesn't fall in the shadow. But if you don't develop it, and you've learned your whole life that nobody appreciates it, it ends up falling into the shadow. So if you have nurtured it, then you'll be very careful, you'll be analytical, and you can make plans that help you reach your goals. But then if you've never developed it, then maybe you are really afraid, you don't like to ever take risks, you're terrified of putting yourself out there, and then you avoid a lot of the things in life that it is really important for you to grow as a human being. And so this is just one example of how there's two sides to the same trait. And so it just depends, did you develop it or not? And it also is, how authentic are you with this trait? So the destructive shadow traits, if they're prevented from maturing, if you've never had a chance to live with them and learn how to control them, all of these things will make up your shadow. And you might call it's the dark part of the mind, and you don't want to acknowledge, you don't want to confront, we don't talk about those things. You never want to, a lot of people never want to be angry. And so when you deny the existence of your shadow and deny all the things that are in your shadow, it begins to grow. And then it can take control, because then your shadow contains everything you're scared of about yourself, everything that you reject in yourself. Even if it's a good thing, you will reject it because that's your ego. And so I know that the term ego has a lot of bad baggage around it, but Jung's definition of ego is really that it's just your ego is working between all the other parts, the conscious, the unconscious. It makes all the executive decisions. And you probably think of yourself as the ego because it's the thing in your head and the voice in your head that holds all of your values and your beliefs and your life experiences. So now your ego has developed a certain kind of thinking style, and that's called your conscious attitude. Your ego selects and makes decisions into the 4 psychological functions. If you've ever done MBTI, where either you are an introvert or an extrovert, you might be judging or sensing, it's even intuition, but it's really important to Carl Jung because it's how your ego selects and makes decisions. So when your ego's in control, if you're an introvert, you'll make decisions one way. If you're an extrovert, you'll make decisions differently. And it shapes your shadow as well. The problem is that your ego's attitude or thinking style has a tendency to be more of one type than another over time, especially as you get older and you start to have less flexibility mentally. You stop having a balanced perspective of things, and you become, maybe you are too emotional, maybe you're too judgmental, and you tend to lean way into your MBTI. I will say I show up as an ENFJ, but sometimes I am an INFJ, depending on how worn out or stressed I am. But as I get older, I have to be careful that I don't lean too far into the J. But right now, what we're going to focus on is that your ego is the one controlling your actions, but it's influenced by all the other parts of your mind. And that's all of the psyche, and that forms the self. And that's the core of who you are. The self represents your highest potential as an individual. And realizing it's like the ultimate goal of self-development. But to really realize your whole self means you have to integrate all of the aspects that you see in the picture, especially your shadow. And that's what shadow work is about. So think about this. You are born whole and with all the pieces that you need to develop in order to be the biggest, best version of yourself. But you get older and you are hanging out in society. Maybe you have brothers and sisters, you have parents, you have grandparents, maybe you have religion or some sort of faith, and you start to break yourself up into these pieces. Some of them are good in your mind, some of them are bad, and it doesn't mean that they really are good or really are bad. It's just what you're being taught. And they say you either have nature or nurture. Well, the nurture part of that is what teaches you what's good or bad, depending on how you grow up. It's really important for your survival. It's the whole job of your ego is to help you become accepted by others so that you feel safe. And we all have to have all parts of ourselves good and embraced, but it's what shapes your persona. And you start masking and you start developing this outward piece of you that You hide all the things that maybe you deem bad or things that you've been criticized for. And so you start rejecting parts of you, and it moves into your unconscious, and then it falls deep into the shadow areas. So let me give you an example of how a shadow can be formed. Let's say, this is a good example for me. I'm really young, and I get upset about something. I can remember a situation where I wasn't sure if this were all the presents, and I didn't get what I wanted for my birthday. And I'm immature, and I have a tantrum, or I got upset about it. I was asking questions like, is that all the presents? And I can remember my parents and my grandparents got upset with me, and I got in trouble, and they told me I was wrong to feel that way, and I shouldn't do that. And I hear it again and again, and then I start to reject this part of myself, and I end up suppressing these desires, and I suppress my upsetness. I repress my anger. If I'm a kid, I'm not going to get loved by the people close to me, and then if you're not taken care of, like, I could die. And so it's a core to who you are to make sure that you're taken care of. And it's as simple as that, is that you want to survive, and to survive, you have to be accepted, and you want to be liked, and you want to fit in. And this is the kind of filter that your ego is running everything through. So you start experimenting, I did, with different ways of behaving. Instead of saying, is that all the presents? You start saying, thank you so much. All these presents were so wonderful. And then everybody loves you and thinks that you're such a well-mannered child. And so you then learn to shape yourself. But the problem with this is that I still have the disappointment. It's just that instead I push it into my unconscious, and then into my shadow. And then two things happen. The first is I can no longer work on my desires. I no longer work on my neediness. I never work on asking for the things that I really want. Instead, I stuff what I want down deep, and I accept whatever I'm given. And so then I learn through a lot of those other similar experiences to be a people pleaser. And being a people pleaser is not necessarily good or bad, but if I've never learned to develop how to express what I want and what I need in an adult, mature way, when I get older, I just accept whatever I'm given. That's when it becomes a problem. So, again, there's usually a time in your life when you were told off for expressing traits, but what you really want to do is figure out a way to properly express them. And so you learn from experience, you learn how to gradually develop them. If you get a chance if I had a chance to express my desire, if I had a chance to express my opinion, I could learn to then say it in a way that people would hear it. I would learn to get my needs met. For people who get really angry, if you get a chance to express it, you can learn how to express your anger in a controlled way and to be constructive. And where I could have learned healthy assertiveness with my needs, a person who has anger issues can learn a healthy assertiveness with their confidence, but not to be angry and explode. So if it's suppressed, it stays in this immature state, and you're not able to control it, you're not able to develop it, and then every time I feel needy or a person feels maybe angry, you end up pushing it away, and then it starts to grow, and it becomes in charge of your shadow, and then it becomes a problem, because the more you suppress, the more power your shadow has. And then, you remember the psyche, it's like it's this whole balancing act. The ego's whole role is to satisfy all the different impulses in your mind. If you understand this, it can be really helpful, especially if you're neurodivergent and you've been taught to maybe suppress some of the parts of your autism, your ADHD. You're taught to feel guilty because you can't focus, and you're stuffing your feelings of confusion, and you don't know how to express them openly and get help and closure and to be mature about it, you just stuff it, and then the frustration just grows. So when you don't feel in control of your life, it's a lot of times because there's this unconscious influence. And then you're supposed to, you hear all the time that you're supposed to be the creator of your own world. You're the master of your universe. There's all of this prosperity, religion, and the master keys, and how you can, you're what you think what you are, and that's, but then it doesn't happen that way. You know, why isn't your life what you want it to be? Why is it not as simple as knowing what you want and going for it? And why do you keep getting in your way? Or why do you feel like other people are getting in your way? It's because you need to understand your shadow self. And your shadow self can explain all of these things, because you really are the creator of your world and your life. It's just that it's a reflection of everything that's within your mind. The thing is if you're only aware of your conscious desires and those motivations, then what happens to your unconsciousness and all of those motivations? What about all those things that are in your unconsciousness? Well, your shadow has a big influence over all of that. And it has a huge influence over your actions and your choices and the feelings, even if it's expressed in ways that are maybe immature. Like you feel needy, you feel hurt, you feel angry. It's always unproductive, and it's just the nature of the unconsciousness. The only way you can make stronger muscles or run an endurance race, like I've run all these marathons. I didn't start by just going out and running 26.2 miles. I started by walking and running and building up my reps. You also have to build up your reps with your shadow. And it is quite a balancing act between your conscious and the unconscious part of your mind. Your ego is actually working as the last say. Here's an example. Let's say that your persona is someone like I'm this way, that you want to be easygoing and flexible, and you don't want people to judge you for having strong opinions, and you don't want to be needy. You just want to be easygoing. And so your shadow then has all of the things that you've suppressed, whether it's anger and rage, whether it's things that you never got to have. And it wants to be expressed because it's the part of you that still exists, and those are your true feelings. So then your ego will sit in the middle and listen to both your shadow self and then your persona, and it will do the best that it can to discern which one gets to win. But then you end up being resentful. You didn't get to express your anger. You didn't get to get the thing that you really wanted. You didn't get to go to eat at the place that you really wanted. And then sometimes it ends up becoming so severe that you end up being passive aggressive. You pull back from people. You get out of relationships. You start to self-sabotage. And you need to know that you could have a different balance in this. You could have a different power dynamic. If you have practiced so much suppression of your anger, then it's going to have more influence over you. And so you may tend to snap and react on one side, and it's ways that aren't normal, and it goes against your persona and everything you've tried to accomplish, because it's built up so much potential energy, and then you've lost complete control of it. And it can ruin the persona that you have, this self-image, because you've suppressed this for so long, and you really want to be this very nice, sweet, easygoing person. But when you do that, then you are letting people overstep your boundaries. And then when you stop speaking up and you stop expressing your anger and you allow things to happen that shouldn't, then you sit there and you say, well, why am I tell myself, why am I such a people pleaser? Why can't I just tell people what I want? If you're an angry person, why am I so passive? Why can't I say what's on my mind and be more confident? They're both in there. You have both the confidence and the passiveness. You have both the need and the wants, and you have the easygoingness. There are two sides to this same coin. And when you're afraid of your own emotions, then it becomes harder to be yourself. And it becomes harder to show up as the authentic version of yourself because you don't trust yourself. You're afraid that you will let all of that explode out of you. And so you either suppress it really hard, or all of a sudden you lose complete control and you damage this persona reputation that you've tried so hard. A lot of times you fear disapproval from people. And so much of the mind is complimentary. You're trying to compensate for yourself and compensate for them. And when you have all of this, you come across maybe as being too shy. Maybe you come across as explosively angry for no reason. It's because you're dueling with your shadow. And the shadow shows up when you're having these inner conflicts. You can feel it with these inner conflicts. I've talked in previous episodes about your proprioception and that you have all these feelings and your limbic brain takes over, and it's hard to stop some of your behaviors because you've wired yourself. Maybe you're a very angry person. Here's the opposite side of this. You're a very angry person. You really are a hard charger. People think you're mean. Maybe you've been taught as a kid to suppress the caring, loving side of you. You've been taught that's weak. Maybe you had a parent that said that when you are soft and you cried, that was it was shameful, and that you were being a weak person, and there's no room for those kinds of feelings, and you should only think about facts, and you're not allowed to express your love, your fear, your concern, your heartfelt desires, and so you've just become angry. Well, then your shadow self will give you a lot of discontent and show up as discord inside of you because maybe you stop speaking, maybe you go and you cry in the corner at home, in your closet. You end up with an ulcer because of it, because you're bottling up all of these emotions, because you don't trust yourself to be both courageous and firm and strong and caring and loving. And so you really fear other people's disapproval. The shadow will show you because you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel tension inside of yourself when these inner dilemmas come up. Maybe you have a negative self-image. Maybe you have these limiting beliefs. Maybe you're feeling unfulfilled. So you grow up learning to suppress the parts of you that you believe are bad, and then you start to split yourself into Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, good and bad, because it's all from the feedback you got from other people, because you always wanted to be accepted and you always wanted to fit in, but the parts of yourself that you reject don't just disappear. They fall into your shadow, and there they have unconscious influence on everything you do, your life's thoughts, your decisions, the actions. They usually show up as self-sabotage when you're acting against your conscious goals. And you can usually put it all down to your shadow. So I hope you enjoyed this first part of the discussion around shadow work, Carl Jung's work. And I hope that you found it valuable and interesting, and that you'll share it with your friends or share it with those that you care and love. If you are looking for someone, a coach that can help you with your own shadow work, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to help coach you around that topic. Also in episode 77, which is part 2 of Carl Jung's shadow work, I talk about how you can do your own shadow work, and I discuss tactics. I mentioned in this video that I was going to tell you how to do that at the end of it, but because I had to break it in two, it shows up in the next episode. So please share, subscribe, and thank you for listening to my video or podcast, wherever this shows up for you. Big brainy hugs from inside the jar. Bye.